1.
Hear a student called Joanna telling her friend about an arts festival, which is being held in the city where they are studying. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 and 2. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 and 2.
Hi, Joanna. Where have you been?
Hi, Dave. I had to go into college to return a DVD I'd borrowed from the library.
Oh, right.
But while I was there, I got some information about the City Arts Festival that starts next week.
Oh, yeah? I saw a poster advertising it somewhere.
Yeah, and I picked up this leaflet from the library. It gives you the website address. So as I was there, I logged on to get more information. Actually, although they've got the full programme of events fixed now, you can't book online, which seems strange. There's a number to phone, though.
And are there student discounts?
I guess so, but I didn't notice. Anyway, there are 3 things I'd like to see. An Italian film, a rock concert, and an art exhibition.
Oh,
The exhibition's free, and you don't need to book, so I'll definitely go to that. But I'm going to get tickets for the film in case they sell out.
good idea. You can always buy concert tickets at the door, because that's in a really big hall.
Right.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to read questions 3 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 3 to 10.
So, when does the festival actually start?
Well, it's usually held the first week of October, but it's earlier this year for some reason. The opening night is September the 20th, and events go on till the end of the month.
And have you got that phone number?
Yeah, it's here. Look, it's 0967 990 776.
Okay, I'll write it down. 0967 990 776. Thanks.
I thought the local council made a profit from the festival, but it says here that there's a commercial sponsor. It's a local bank. I didn't know that.
Neither did I. What other events have they got on?
As well as the art exhibitions and stuff that's open every day, there are special events each day. Like on Monday, there's a musical in the City Hall. That's only £3.65 for students.
I think I'll give that a miss. I've got football training on Mondays, but I'm free on Wednesday.
There's a jazz band on then, and that's only £2.50 for students.
Sounds good. Is that in the City Hall too? We could go.
Well, I'm busy actually, but it's at the sports centre if you're interested.
Oh, right.
Thursday's the cheapest event, only £1.25 for students, and it's on in the library. Can you guess what it is?
Probably the college choir.
Actually, no. They've not been asked, apparently.
Oh.
No, it's a poetry evening.
Isn't there any modern dance on anywhere?
On Friday, That's at the college. It's quite expensive though. £15 for adults and £12.75 for students.
Oh, yes, that is a lot. If I'm going to spend that much, I'd prefer to go out on Saturday.
Yeah, me too. But on Saturday night there isn't live music or a party or anything. Just the fireworks in the city park. And that's only £1.50.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a recorded message giving information about an animal park. First, you will have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully to the first part of the message and answer questions 11 to 15.
Welcome to the Australian Wildlife Park Information Line. The Australian Wildlife Park is very proudly owned and operated by an Australian family, John and Amanda Brooks, who operate the Australian Wildlife Park with their children, David and Sandra. The family doesn't receive any government assistance. It's solely funded by tourists visiting the park. Thank you for your support and assistance. When the Brooks family purchased the Australian Wildlife Park in 1987, the park housed a small collection of animals and birds on a modest 5-acre or 2-hectare property. A few years later, the park doubled in size when the family purchased the adjoining property. Also, the collection of animals started to boom. In May 2003, the family designed and built a new park in the public open space, once again more than doubling in size. The park now features about 200 species with more than 2,000 head of animals, birds and reptiles. Regarding the entry fee, adults pay $23, children aged 3 to 14 pay $10, age pensioners are $17 and students are $16. One of the great things about the Australian Wildlife Park is that all of the attractions are included in the entry fee. No extra money is needed around the park, so make the most of your experience. All shows, talks, photo opportunities and animal food are included in your entry fee. In addition, the Australian Wildlife Park is open every day of the year from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m, except Christmas Day, 25th of December.
Before the final part of the message, you now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now answer questions 16 to 20.
Several attractions are available to visitors to the Australian Wildlife Park. Firstly, you can meet the koalas between 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Here, people can view the koala colony in a natural environment. Another attraction is to feed the kangaroos between 9 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. Visitors can take a walk through the kangaroo enclosure, viewing them in a natural environment. Kangaroo food is provided and the kangaroos are very friendly. Also enjoyable are the wombats. At 11 a.m, 2 p.m and 3:45 p.m, there are interactive shows where the team is delighted to introduce you to these popular animals. Other attractions that may interest you are an interactive farmyard, suitable for children of all ages. Animal food is provided, and the animals are very friendly. In addition, the working farm is where the country comes to town. Visitors can milk a cow, bottle feed a lamb, watch farm dogs gathering the sheep. All the excitement of a real Australian farm. When they ask for volunteers, be sure to put your hand up. Everyone can get involved. We at the Australian Wildlife Park hope all our visitors have an enjoyable time. See you soon!
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear two students called Jimmy and Kathy talking to their tutor about the current research paper. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Before we start, Jimmy and Kathy, thanks for coming in today to talk about your current research paper. Well, I will also give you some suggestions for your future presentation later.
That's great.
Okay, I've read the introductory chapter, and so far I like where you're going with your research, you two.
Thanks. What did you think of the procedure section?
I haven't got there yet. I'll get to that and the results and discussion section in a bit.
Oh, if you haven't read the rest, are you just saying you like the introduction?
No, the layout is really well done. You have each section clearly marked and have the header and footer perfectly formatted, and your title page is right on the money. A lot of students have trouble with that one.
To be honest, we did refer a lot to the example we received in class.
That's good to do for spacing and layout, as long as you're not also copying the information. The background information is a little sparse though. You may want to add to it.
You think so? I was more worried about whether I had enough data.
You definitely need more background information. I would think about finding some more online articles or doing more research in the campus library.
That's a good idea. We can go tomorrow. I find it too tough finding the subject matter in the online journal database.
I also like being able to flip through the physical journal as opposed to trying to scroll down on a computer.
Me too. Oh, I almost forgot. I've included all of my citations in the abstract. But could you help me with the bibliography? I should be using a bibliography, right? Not an appendix.
Sure, I can help with that. Yes, for this type of scientific research paper, list all sources that you cite in the body of your paper in a bibliography. Go to the website I gave you last time to see the exact way to list each source.
Okay, thanks. I'll do that. We still have a lot of things to fix up.
Yeah, but there's a lot of good stuff here to work with. So enough about the paper. How is the presentation going?
Well, it's all right. I'm going to go try out the new presentation software while Jimmy's working on the bibliography.
Yeah, we are hoping to make an animation of an actual pump, but still have a lot to learn about how to do that.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
Who would have thought before we started this project that we would be able to recreate the motion of a pump? This stuff is just so interesting.
So glad to hear it.
Yeah, I am glad I took engineering this semester. I would definitely like to keep up with it.
You know, there's an organisation called the Machine Engineer Society. You should look into joining it. You'd need to score well in your engineering class to qualify, but I think you can do it.
Interesting. I will definitely check it out. I would really like to get in contact with some professionals in the engineering field to find out more. I don't really know anyone in the field now, though.
I think if you keep meeting people in your classes and professors, you'll be able to get in contact with some really helpful people.
Well said, Jimmy. If engineering pumps is something you both are specifically interested in, make sure you stay up to date on new developments. In fact, you could visit the local water treatment facility periodically to see what new developments are going on.
That may be a good way to get some practical experience.
Well, I don't think they would let you handle any equipment by just visiting the facility. If you really want to get your hands dirty, so to speak, I would recommend instead seeking a summer internship.
Wow, you have so many helpful suggestions for getting a leg up. Now, if only you could tell me how to get my work published.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, honestly, all you really need to do is, once you have a dissertation, present it. Present it often and to many audiences, and once you get feedback, adjust it. You'll get published one day.
Wow, this meeting has been truly inspiring. Thanks for your help.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. You will hear part of a lecture on art history.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
In the last lectures, we looked at the art of the ancient Egyptians, and then considered the art of other ancient Mediterranean civilizations, in particular Greece and Rome. We're now going to return to Egypt to consider a set of very unusual pictures known as the Fayum portraits. The Fayum is a lush green area about 100 kilometers west of Cairo. Following the conquest of Egypt by the Greek warrior Alexander the Great in 332 BC, large numbers of businessmen and officials who had come over from Greece settled in this fertile region with their families. They gradually adopted some features of Egyptian culture, including the practice of mummification, embalming the bodies of their dead and wrapping them in linen bandages in order to preserve them as mummies. The name actually comes from an Arabic word meaning an embalmed body. These newcomers made one distinctive innovation, though. After binding the mummy, they laid over the face a picture representing the person inside. The portraits look like oil on canvas, but they were actually produced using a technique called encaustic, where the artist applies pigmented wax to a wooden board with a small spatula. The Egyptologist William Petrie, who discovered many of these mummies with their accompanying portraits at the end of the 19th century, was convinced that they were actually done in the lifetime of the subject, rather than being painted after the person's death, as had been the case with older Egyptian paintings. He felt they were very different from the traditional stylized images that had been used on Egyptian mummy casings in previous centuries, and was convinced that they were actually portraits giving a realistic depiction of the person. He pointed out that the boards on which they were painted showed signs of having been cut down to size to fit within the mummy bandages. To him, this suggested that they may have originally been larger and been hung in the houses of the owners during their lifetimes. But more than a century after they came to light, nobody knew how far they were really depictions of real people, as against idealized portraits. Then a team from Manchester University decided to find out, by recreating the faces of Fayum mummies in clay and then comparing the reconstructions with the portraits. The team was provided with skulls from 2 Fayum mummies from the British Museum, and given the information, based on X-rays and other evidence, that one of the mummies was of a 50-year-old man, and the other was a woman in her early 20s. Armed only with this information, they set to work. First, they created copies of the skulls. Then they used clay to build up the facial muscles in order to reconstruct what the person looked like. After weeks of painstaking labour, 2 faces emerged. Only then were the 2 portraits revealed so that the match between the reconstructions and the portraits could be examined. In the case of the man, both model and portrait showed a broad, flat face with a slightly hooked nose and a fleshy mouth with broad lips. But the man in the portrait was noticeable for his 5 o'clock shadow, the beard beginning to grow around his chin and on his cheeks. This would have been quite a recognizable feature of the man in real life, and an easy thing for the painter to copy. However, it wasn't something that the makers of the model could know about. In the reconstruction, the right eye was slightly higher than the left, and this was the same on the portrait. But on the portrait, the eyes were very large, which is standard with many of the Fayum portraits, while in the model they were longer and narrower. The portrait of the woman appeared to be even more of a standard type, with her large eyes, straight nose, and small mouth. These pretty feminine features suggested this could be an idealized woman's face, and yet it proved to match the reconstruction surprisingly closely. The proportions of the lower face corresponded, and so did those of the forehead, though in the portrait the eyes were closer together and larger than in the reconstruction. And in both cases, the head was set on a solid neck, suggesting a more powerful physique than you might have expected from these delicate features. So, overall, the similarities between the portraits and the models are too close to be accidental. The artists may have started from a standard picture, but attempts were made to modify this to reflect the characteristics of the subject, what gave the face its personal qualities. Obviously, this isn't much of a sample upon which to judge an entire genre of portraiture, but the researchers are convinced that, on the whole, the artists aimed to represent their subjects as they appeared in real life, whether this was flattering to them or not.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Thank you. give it to me.